Hello and welcome to First Issues Weekly, the compilation of the weekly comic review show First Issues Now. Every day you can check out the newest First Issues over on First Issues Now, or weekly in a batch like this right here. I'm AJ Carey, the comic archivist, and these are the comics released for the week of October 8th, 2025. I swear I'm almost caught back up, but hey, I'm only a couple days late. I'd feel more sorry for the people who watch the individual reviews who just got 16 episodes of a show uploaded all at once. Big yikes, my dudes, and boy howdy, am I also hopped up on the antihistamines, and hopped up on the cough medicines, and I've chugged a monster or two. Look, this might be a little unhinged. Let's get to the show. This is the latest WTF-ery happening to the DC universe. Only instead of heavy metal music, Dr. Manhattan, or just editorial shrugging, it's going to be a tournament with a wickedly weird bracket. Yes, I actually have an episode up about all that. It's fun, and it shows the wide gamut of people who have no idea what's even going on, whether they're no readers, casual readers, or me. Anyways, let's actually talk about DC KO number 1. Written by Scott Snyder, art by Javi Fernandez, interlude art by Germanico, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, with letters by Hassan Otsman-Alhau. I swear I've had to say Hassan's name at least 5 times a week for the last few weeks, and I still cannot say his name right, or even the same way twice. It's now a running gag, and not me being terrible at this. Anyways, first the solicit and then the talking. The heart of Apocalypse has transformed Earth into a hellscape, in preparation for the return of Darkseid. The end of the DC Universe is here. The Justice League's only chance to defeat Darkseid is to enter a deadly tournament, an epic and over-the-top battle royale that will surprise you. The world's greatest heroes fight to become the champions to enter the ring against Darkseid. But there's the catch. The closer you get to the heart of Apocalypse, the more it corrupts you, changes you into something dangerous. Which DC character has what it takes to make it to the end? Who will do what it takes to win it all, even if it means taking down their friends and family? You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts! Cringy Batman reference aside, this isn't supposed to be a battle royale, right? It's a clearly defined tournament. You even made a bracket. There's actually a contest for said bracket. But actually, no, I'm wrong, and the marketing is wrong. Apparently it's a messy free-for-all with overblown prose. Scott Snyder, you didn't lose anything after death metal, did you? Anyways, the plot for this is basically, hey, none of this matters, so soups, go do your super duty and destroy everyone. Although I am actually curious about the bracket since Joker's not on there, and he's actually the one that just blew my fantasy roster out of the water with a bang. Seriously, that bracket talk I did with my sister, who does Sammy's talks on this channel, my son, and my nephew, is actually a lot funnier with one piece taken off the board. But let's get into a bigger point I think that matters here. The execution. Scott Snyder was never going to make a comic that was going to be a straightforward mash-em-up fun romp. It literally starts with Bruce, Diane, Clark, and Lois playing, I think, HeroClix. It could also be a DC version of that Marvel Crisis Protocol TTRPG. I don't know, but it's game night, and the metaphor that runs through the book is that Superman needs to not think of this as life or death. He needs to think of it in a game format. It's actually really stupid how it seems like everyone decided to just kind of charge into the arena, even though half the people there were tacticians who'd know about the traps and not to get caught up. But that's something that's going to happen a lot here. Characters being kind of dumb for the plot. Because it's not about the character actions, it's about the story that wants to be told. It happens with most team-up books and DC ending events that have come out every other year at this point. I think we're at 2.5 Universe Kaboom events since Death Metal. I could go into what I disliked about this, but honestly I think it's not bad. I think the major question is it worth it to even start this ride? I mean, the art is fantastic, although this is most definitely let down when I read it digitally, since I think half of the book was 2-page splashes, and this really cool 2-pager where Superman is speeding zigzagged across the page and you see the panels laid out in a zigzag way reads so much cooler in print. I am actually really glad that I've been so behind on these because I got to read the print version of this after I did the digital, which is why this part sounds like it's unscripted, because it is. God, this thing is beautiful. And now, the big booming 2-pagers, it's a great concept, but it's very rarely ever been translated well to digital, at least in my eyes. However, I will talk about DCKO being another universe shifter. No, that doesn't mean it's going to be an outright reboot. It will be a relaunch and a revamp for whatever their next air-quote initiative is, which will also slightly alter the universe. If it's a literal change in the universe, they've been plugging at Darkseid being this major force for so long now that it feels like they just can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It was kind of actually done very well. It will be the one few thing I say about the New 52, but it was actually really interesting when they did the Darkseid War thing for the New 52. But ever since they decided that he was a cosmic, almost anti-Monitor level threat, it feels too, you just can't put the bunny back in the box kind of a thing. Especially since the KO plot in general feels very Warworld and is totally Mongol coded. Actually, while I was talking about this with a friend right before it came out, I was actually really wondering if this was going to be almost retconned to the start of the Absolute Universe, and we were going to get Darkseid winning, where he then rewrites the universe, and we almost do an Age of Apocalypse treatment, making the main universe the Absolute one for a little bit. It'd be a bit weird since the biggest reason Absolute is going well is because it's a clear start and has clear stories going, and can end when those stories are done, but still, it was just one of those ideas I had. Now, despite the fact that someone called me a bot for not liking this because I wanted it to be a dumb, fun mash-em-up, my verdict for this is, whatevs. Whatevs is a new category that I'm creating, which essentially is me saying, I don't have a verdict because this is a major book. This is a massive event that if you are a DC comic reader, you will buy this book. You will check this book out regardless of what I say. It is absolutely a milestone book, so whether I think it's a bit messy and bloated and disjointed in a sense, my opinion is whatevs. And it doesn't actually matter. Although at the very least, if you are going to buy this book, get the Dan Mora bracket wraparound cover or the main one. I think the other covers aren't bad, but they do read as just kind of standard variant covers, which, while looking great, is actually kind of a letdown for something that is this huge. Maybe that's what my issue with it is. Well, yes, this first issue here is very focused on Superman and feels almost more like DCKO issue 0. I think the fact that it is trying to be so straightforward and only focus on Superman could be the detriment. It's a universe ender, and while yes, obviously you're going to focus on Superman and Batman, and I actually really like some of the scenes, like where Superman's like, no, we can't have a contest to end the world, what the hell? And everyone else talks him into it. That is where the book wants to be, even though the actual concept is not there. Okay, it's time to get into the event that I was actually fearing a smidge more than DCKO, but I didn't hate the Overture issue, so who knows? I do know that I wasn't a fan of the last Amazing X-Men title from the mid-2010s. No, that's not really relevant to the current one, but oh well. This is Amazing X-Men number 1, written by Jed MacKay, art by Mahmoud Asrar, colors by Matthew Wilson, with letters by Clayton Cowles. Solicit first, as is the new standard. Hope they survive the experience. X years later. I know it's supposed to be 10. On the run after a deadly clash with Revelation's chief assassin, the shattered X-Men desperately gamble everything on one last mission. With help from an unexpected ally, they venture into the haunted ruins of Grey Malkin. What they find there may change everything. If they survive. So before I talk about anything, I just want to say, like I said in the Overture issue, I love the fact that Glob is front and center in this book, especially able to give this much attitude towards Psyche. It's just honestly really refreshing, and one of the reasons I don't exactly hate this book. Yes, their plan is stupid. I didn't bring it up last issue, but the plan is Cyclops and Beast's consciousnesses were pulled from the past, or are present, to this future so they could help assassinate Revelation. That doesn't exactly make sense to me, but hey, it is what it is. Oh, we actually get an answer to a question that I brought up. Wolverine is Revelation's Angel of Death super badass assassin, but sadly the only reason he is that he's being mind-controlled, so we do know that there is a way to get him back to the side of the good guys by the end of this anyways. Anyways, the main plot of this issue is that this band of X-Men, if you want to know who they are, check out Overture from last week, go to Grey Malkin, which is Graymalkin Lane, which was where the Charles Xavier Institute was, but then that became the Graymalkin Prison, which then got leveled when Revelation took over, so now it's haunted by a ton of dead mutant ghosts that sadly all look like generic ghosts. But it is defended by Death Dream, who I have no idea who they are, but they look cool and then kind of control ghosts, I think. Although the major action of this issue is that Wolverine is back to chasing them, so there is a big fight where Hank makes a one-way teleporter. Everyone who's been involved in the story and isn't introduced 5 pages earlier survives to be teleported to Providence, which is controlled by the Dark Child. That's magic for anyone who doesn't know, who is also sitting on a demonic juggernaut with a very uncomfortable-looking Psylocke next to her. I mean, it does make sense why Revelation wouldn't go after somewhere that the Queen of Limbo is, but this place looks pretty normal, while Ilyana Rasputin is there in full goat-legged glory. But that is a next issue problem. God damn, this is actually a good comic. And honestly, it may just be that I didn't take to the From the Ashes status quo, so this setting may actually allow me to have that breather enough to come back into that after this, since they announced Shadows of Tomorrow already. And yes, there's a Psych solo book there, and yes, like every other X title ever in existence, I will have to buy it for my collection, even if I don't read it. Yes, I'm one of those people. But this book, superb. Of course, I could also just be fanboying over the fact that Mahmoud Asrar is drawing this, and I swear on all things that this man can do no wrong when he's the artist. It's kinetic, it's tight, it's dynamic, it flows. It's just sweet all around. So my verdict, through all of that rambling, is probably an obvious: collect it. Collect it means that you should throw this title onto your pull list right now, digitally to immediately read it, and physically to read it as soon as you can get it, and get all of the variant covers, with a special shout out to the Sanford Green variant cover, because yeah, that's sweet as heck. Now, we will continue on and hope that the rest of Age of Revelations makes me feel this happy. Completely random cold open here, but I actually have the first appearance of Binary in X-Men 164. That wasn't even one of my I must collect buys. That was actually one I grew up reading, smack dab in the middle of my parents' collection, which started with issue 97, I think. Good times. Right, so none of that matters as we look at Binary number 1, written by Stephanie Phillips, art by Giotto Belluccio, colors by Rochelle Rosenberg, with letters by Travis Lanham. This is Binary, and the universe burns with her. X years later. I know it's supposed to be 10, guys, shut up. In the ashes of the old world, to survive, she is reborn, a cosmic force channeling the Phoenix itself. With the universe crumbling, Binary returns to save what's left. But power this great always comes with a price, and the end of everything might begin with her. Okay, so future history here. Apparently the next time Jean Grey dies, she transfers the Phoenix Force power into Carol Danvers. Because she was binary? Maybe I'm wrong, and please let me know if this was a retcon in the past, but Binary was just a random white hole powered form, after some experimentation by the Brood, for Carol. But I think you could also imply that that would be part of the Phoenix Force. I don't know. I mean, I know that Marvel time travel does generally mean you're going to have alternate realities, not an exact future, but the past could be different too. But then again, it's also not really that big of a retcon, and actually could make some sense given the white hot room and a white hole do sound similar. It was also introduced in a Claremont thing, so it could easily be a Claremont thing. So either way, Carol now has the Phoenix Force and spent the last 10 years protecting her hometown with a psychic bubble that she also has now with the Phoenix. Cool. But now the town is getting all rustly about, you just want to be a dictator, there's no actual monsters out there, thanks to a mysterious woman getting a dude to stir up trouble at a town meeting. That same woman also summons a purple psychic snake to break down the bubble so that Babbles, who I think are basically caveman-level feral mutant or humans, I'm not sure. They wear loincloths and just attack, so I don't know. They break in, and then we get the reveal that the woman that did all this was Jean Grey? Nah, more than likely, I'm thinking it's Hope Summers, but at the same time, it could be Jean, because that's what she'd do. Hell, it could be Madeline Pryor, but it probably isn't, since that would be what the hell. However, with the purple energy, I assumed it was going to be Betsy, since we saw Quinnan as Psylocke over in the X-Men book. I don't know. When did her powers become purple? Like, I remember, I think, OG Jean from that whole Children of the Atom thing, I think hers was magenta, wasn't it? I don't know. I tried to block her out of my memories. Anyways, first, the art of this issue is really good, although it definitely feels like it only really hits a stride when Binary is flaming up, but it never feels bad in any way. As for the writing, I want to say it's good. Carol isn't written poorly, and Stephanie Phillips really does do fantastic writing, mostly in dialogue, so having a lot of character beats in this, being dialogue-driven, really does hit home the emotions of the story, even if it does feel a bit disconnected from the rest of the Age of Revelation. And it also feels a little bit out of continuity with what this specific timeline is meant to be. It still is not a bad read at all. So my verdict on this is going to be, read it. Read it means that it is definitely worth reading, although it would definitely be up to the individual reader to figure out if it's going to be something to follow monthly, or if it'll be a trade read at the end, or if it's not even notable at all. It really is one of those things that I didn't dislike reading, but I probably am going to check out after the fact myself. Here we go, my main Wolverine gal getting her own book, even if she's now Sabretooth in this timeline. God damn, they'll try to make her anything but Wolverine anymore, won't they? Yes, this is a joke. Only a joke. Anyways, let's hear it for Laura Kinney, Sabretooth #1. Written by Erica Schultz, art by Valentina Pinti, colors by Rochelle Rosenberg, with letters by Corey Petit. The all-new Sabretooth. X years later. Yes, I know, it's a decade. She's taken the name of once bitter enemy Sabretooth, and fights beside Revelation himself. Why did Laura Kinney abandon her legacy? What secrets does she keep from her mutant world? When loyalty changes, blood means everything. So the answer is Laura sides with Revelation because he's totally protecting all mutants, even the ones he doesn't agree with. Laura wouldn't believe that. Not after everything. However, things do seem a bit muddled since she apparently had a kid with Zane Creed, who is why she took the mantle of Sabretooth, because he's dead, and he was Sabretooth after his father. The whole plot of this issue is that she wants Gabby and Aki to take her kid to wherever they're going. Gabby is Honey Badger and Aki is Helverine. I have not really been reading any of those. But this plot then leads to Revelation finding out about this because Hellion saw them take the kid, and Revelation has his speech about how dare someone want to leave his perfection because he gives everyone what they want, and Laura should trust him, for why else would she not want her son to grow up with her because he's amazing? Oh, and then she kills Hellion at the end. Maybe I went into this book with the wrong mindset. Laura as Sabretooth, not a bad idea. Laura with a kid. It's the future. I'm shocked we're not actually seeing a lot more legacy kids, honestly. But I think the issue I have here is that this is it really feels like it came out at the wrong time. It's great that we get Laura narrating, especially when the book begins with Abby and Aki meeting up with her for the reveal of her really cool costume and her son, but it feels very hand-wavy that she's on Revelation's side with very little pushback, outside of Gabby being really mad at her for being on his side, while Aki is trying to keep the peace between them. This is one of those things where it feels very stale. I mean, Gabby and Laura both being at each other's throat could be compelling, especially with how angry Gabby is at her. But when it comes off like there's no real stakes to it, and honestly, maybe that's it. It's the same thing I felt with the Binary book, except I also do feel like I really want to know more about the Wolverine camp, because this is more of a Wolvie fam book than just a straight Laura book. It'd be interesting if the pages were either focused on showing Laura giving up her son with the emotion there, or if it focused on Gabby and Aki as they were trying to escape with Laura's son, maybe while being hunted by Laura through the woods, even though she wants them to escape, but she can't because Revelation's right there, and we get this really cool dichotomy. But honestly, there's just no real danger that we're seeing this early on in the event, or in this comic, where it feels like we're at the give my son to my clone and demon-possessed dude, to make sense yet. However, with that said, I do actually still find this book to be decent, and I really do like the art. It's good, clean art. So my verdict for this book is... read it. Read it means that I'm split on my own mind about the book, so you should absolutely, at the very least, pick this up and read it for yourselves. You may read it and want to add it to your pull list, or wait for the trade to see where everything else goes, or just forget it exists. Who's to say? Not me. Although I will probably check this out after the trade comes out, just because I want to know more, but this is not giving it to me in the dosage that I need. I'm not entirely sure why we're going to the Mojoverse already, but hey, I'm sure this is just going to be a fun and weird series, because Hickman needs to have a paycheck linked to this event somehow. Oh well, I'm at least looking forward to Longshots number 1, written by Jerry Duggan and Jonathan Hickman, art by Alan Robinson, colors by Yen Nitro, with letters by Ariana Marr. Oh, I feel this is going to be a thing. Solicit first. Buy this comic, or all of your favorite heroes will die. X years later, and Mojo's got a new game for Wonder Man, Hellcat, Bishop, Rhino, and Kraven the Hunter to play. There are no rules. One survivor wins. The others die. Mojo promises you can vote for the winner with your dollars, but you probably can't. Mojo can promise that any of this is true, or that you can even vote, as all decisions will be made by Mojo and Mojo alone, in his Mojo Dojo. It's fame or fatality in the wildest X book of the year. Void where prohibited, no purchase necessary unless you plan on missing out on one of the craziest comic book series you'll ever read in your life. I admit I'm a buzzkill, because that was slightly painful to read. I thought it sounded fun, hopefully. Also, I've read the wildest X book of the year, and that was the reprint of Beak's Thanksgiving with the Undertow, and I find it highly suspicious that it'll be the craziest comic book series I've ever read in my lifetime. It won't even be on the same tier as Boris the Bear, sir. You aren't even Wacky Squirrel. But okay, let's see. Again, I have to be the killjoy because that book was okay. As much as everyone complains about Deadpool just destroying the fourth wall, this book does that, but in the most ham-fisted way, and not even really in an in-universe way. I mean, Mojo has always been a means to make some colorful and receptive jokes to the audience about television and comics in general, and generally just consumable media. But this is literally just a comic going, hey, we need to make a comic, let's go find some comic people and they'll be wacky. Like, Hellcat just killed Carnage, which is why she gets hired. She gets to make a team-up of Bishop, who's practicing his sweet one-liners and has Bucky's arm, Rhino, who's having panic attacks because someone stole his horn, Kraven, who's grinding up a rhino horn that says special occasion only on it, and Wonder Man, who's kinda just there. It's silly, I get it, I do. But it's like you get to Hellcat and the plot after Mojo kills his lawyers because of franchise rights, ha ha ha, and the X-Babies as his production crew come up with the concept of a reality show. The thing is that's what Mojo's been doing. He's always been doing it. I get it, it's for the bit, and I've gone way too many hours of me on other podcasts like Blinking 15 Minutes where I am just living for the bit. But like, why? It's not tied in with Age of Revelation outside of character redesign, and even then this is a Mojo staple too. Why is Spiral Longshot's manager now? Did I miss something stupid in the past? Now that being said, I hated it. But you can tell that Hickman and Duggan had tons of fun on this book, because you can almost hear their own snickering behind every dumb, obnoxious moment. Hey, did you see when I wrote that thing about variant cover sales? Yes, you can call me a hypocrite because I found dumber books than this entertaining. But there comes a point when all the nudges and outright shouts that I'm reading a comic book that really has nothing behind it just feels more insulting than it does funny. The art is good, I will give it that. And I think that there's a lot of people who may enjoy this book if they don't have 30 years of seeing Mojo or crazy stories to muddy the waters of actual crazy. Yes, like that Longshot comic that they make fun of in this. My verdict on this is going to be simple. Read it. Read it means that you should get it and read it for yourself. It didn't click with me, but I could easily see how the obnoxious things in this could get other people reading it and liking it. So it is definitely a Think for yourself. Maybe you'll pull it. I mean, the X-Babies are on the cover of the next one, or maybe you'll wait for the trade, or maybe you'll shrug it off and go back to check out a different book, say from last week, like Starship Godzilla. I'm just saying, there's better books. Of course, they were going to release a comic that was just all about fleshing out the Age of Revelation. I'm sure we're all dying to find out what happened to everyone else that didn't get a solo series throughout this event. I don't even know if I'm being sarcastic about that. Yikes. This is World of Revelation number 1, with 3 stories, so we'll get to the creatives when we get to those, but first, the solicit. The world outside your window is gone. X years later. What happened to the Fantastic Four? And what horrors plague the East Coast? How does the rest of the world survive the rise of Revelation? And far above, on Arakko, what does Apocalypse think of his heir's new empire? Discover the far-reaching impact of Age of Revelation across Marvel's universe. Yeah, okay. So the first story is The Message, written by Al Ewing, art by Agustina Alessio, with letters by Travis Lanham. The story is essentially a look at where Arakko is now as Charles Xavier goes to talk to Apocalypse. Although I will say I personally like how Apocalypse is just like, ugh, I should have chosen Richter. Although it does showcase a potential plan that Xavier and Apocalypse may have to end Revelation. Although I'm not sure why Apocalypse would care. I mean, he's got his mutant supremacy to some extent, and he is a ruler in Arakko, I think. Anywho, the next story is Never Let Me Go, written by Steve Fox, art by Jesus Marino, colors by Will Quintana, with letters by Travis Lanham. This one is focused on Wiccan and Hulkling as they try to stop Revelation early on. But Revelation basically erases language from Wiccan's mind, so Hulkling basically gets to ruminate on how the Age of Heroes is over and how he no longer has any options outside of taking care of a babbling Wiccan. It's actually a lot more poignant than that, I will admit. The last story is The Epoch of Revelation, written by Ryan North, art by Adam Zalowski, colors by Chris Peter, with letters by Travis Lanham. I could give a quick breakdown, but basically this is how the adorable Herbie robot famed of the Fantastic Four is the only surviving record of the Age of Heroes that we know and love, as time seems to be cyclical on the Earth of the 616. Neat. Oh, and Franklin Richards is the last surviving human, air quote, since he's also Carnage. Okay. All of these stories are not bad. They are little snippets and vignettes set in the Age of Revelation, and they are serviceable. I will say that the one that only feels like it matters as a reader personally is the middle one with Wiccan and Hulkling, while the first one with Xavier and Apocalypse may be teaming up to stop Revelation, may hint to future events in this event, but I don't know. I mean, I think it feels a bit early to do a quick anthology when you have so many miniseries about this being launched right around this. Seriously, I'm reading this after 3 other one-shots, and that's not including any that are still in for next week. So I think my verdict is pretty simple. If you're already collecting everything for Age of Revelation, of course, get this. If you're a fan of Wiccan and Hulkling and basically need every scant piece of lit that Marvel gives us from them, I would say pick this up. Otherwise, I think on a strictly reading level, it's easily ignorable. Unless you're going to be reading it through Marvel Unlimited when they're doing bundles of whatever they do for storylines that are upcoming or currently going. It is adequate. Okay, now we're off the world of Revelation to go back to Spidey's college days. God damn it. I mean, I'm a fan of JMS on Spidey, but at this stage, I have seen Marvel do everything in their power to not have Spidey move forward, complete with them announcing ASM is doing the "Screw my Earthling story, I'm going to space" storyline soon. Anyways, here's The Amazing Spider-Man Torn, number 1. Written by J. Michael Straczynski, art by Per Perez, colors by Guru EFX, with letters by Joe Caramagna. Now I'm going to skip the solicit on this since it's just saying, hey, it's Peter Parker during his college years. Expect to see Flash Thompson, Mary Jane Watson, and Gwen Stacy. It knows that all it needs to say is that this isn't the current Amazing Spider-Man book to sell, even if it's trying to sell off of the stage that basically these are just marketing words more than characters. Again, I love JMS on Spider-Man. But when the entire solicit doesn't give anything other than the most SEO buzzwords, I'm just sitting here going, okay, boomer, which sucks, because this isn't a bad read of a book. It starts decently enough with Petey using a new tech tool to use sound waves to melt Sandman, and then contain him in several plastic bottles. Neat concept. We get the stock stuff of Peter falling asleep in class because of his activities, and a teacher saying that he needs to try harder. Basically, this is a stock Spidey book that feels like a good, not great, issue of Amazing Spider-Man back in the day. I would probably say roughly from the 70s. I think the scene that really feels weird is that there's a scene where Petey, MJ, Gwen, and Harry are at the beach and look into a campfire and say what they see their future as. Some are obviously a yikes moment since Gwen doesn't have a future. MJ was introduced as a model, so it's weird that they kind of underplayed that aspect. And Peter sees that eventually Aunt May will die. Yeah, I think that's an 0 for 4 on this one. The actual story here, though, is that on their way back from the beach, Peter hears a gunshot and leaves so that he can go investigate as Spider-Man. That's where we see a gal trying to steal a magical book. And after some really poor shooting, she bleeds on that book, which transforms her into a demon, and she flies off. Yep. Again, that is a very classic Spider-Man comic style, with an art style that is every much of the now. Now, it's not a bad comic book, but I'm going to use this as a soapbox for a second. Sorry, JMS, you wrote a good book, but there's a bigger point that as a parasocial hanger-on to comics since the 90s, especially Spidey comics, I have to ask this wholeheartedly. What the fuck is even going on with the Spidey camp at this point? Every week it feels like I have a new Spidey book coming out, and every week it feels like Marvel is doing its best to both avert eyes away from ASM by making so many outs for it, like this, or a month or so ago when we had that restaurant one-shot, or the Spider-Man Noir that was basically what a 616 Peter Parker book should feel like, but at the same time punishing any book that takes too many eyes off of 616 Peter, looking at everyone who gets dragged into the 616 so they can partner with the flagship Spider book over here. I'll give Nick Lowe a cheat code here, and I know he's not listening. I know most people aren't listening. Thank you for the dozen or so people who listen to each and every one of these. Anyways, this secret? Make multiple ongoings. Have Friendly Neighborhood be his high school years. Have Spectacular be his college years. Have something like Web of Spidey for his post-college years. And then have Amazing Spider-Man be his present and future. I know, maybe this sounds costly, but if you're going to drop however much money to get JMS and Guru EFX and basically have these perpetual quick miniseries set in these different time periods, just have it be an ongoing. Then you get the benefits of a perpetual reader base. Even if it's a low reader base, it still probably get better than half of the books that are going out right now, because you'll get the neckbeards who go, I like Peter Parker's Spider-Man as high school. Cool, we have an ongoing. Hey, you want to test people out on Spider-Man? Throw them onto the secondary fucking high school's Peter book. As for the continuity douchebags, fuck them. There's a social contract that we keep perpetually forgetting in comic books, which is you can have hundreds of early adventures of books because there is no actual time scale. I mean, unless you're doing things like Savage Dragon, which is meant to have a cohesive time scale, but the magic of comics and the meta of it when it comes to the big two and these combined universes is that Pete can be the eternal teen, or he can be the eternal broke joke kid in his 20s who can't afford rent. He can even be the whiny man-child who's teaching at Empire State in his 30s. However, of course, my big problem here is that I'm not a reader who likes backwashing. I may not like certain story beats for Peter Parker throughout the last 30 years of reading, but Marvel's perpetual need to backwash to earlier times for no real reason here is going to always be the leash that stops it from going forward and becoming something better. But that's me hopped up on Dayquil, Monster, and No Sleep Talking. I can easily be wrong. Hilariously, the closest book I could compare this to would be Quality of Life, except the art in this is so much better. Sorry, Sabu. Guru EFX wins. Oh right, Imperial War is still going on. I'm sorry, I figured with Age of Revelation trying to be a big event that they wouldn't have another cross-title event happening around that time. Seems a little weird to me, but hey, I'm assuming that this is because they knew this was going to be aimed at a much smaller pool of readers. This is Imperial War, Imperial Guardians #1, written by Dan Abnett and Jonathan Hickman, art by Corey Smith, with Wayne Foucher on inks for him, and Luca Maresca, colors by Espen Grundegern, with letters by Corey Petit. God, it feels good to read a Dan Abnett Guardians book again. But wait, first the solicit. Spinning straight out of the pages of Imperial. As the events of Imperial explodes in fatal fashion, the Super Skrull finds himself at the center of a seditious scheme with consequences that will be felt by the entire cosmos. But he's not the only superpower looking for answers. An unlikely team is on the hunt to avert disaster before galactic order is lost for good. Yeah, that's the plot. If you didn't know the big twist from the Imperial War Nova tie-in, this ends with another reveal of that twist. So, spoilers, the Inhumans are behind the whole Imperial War. They killed Jason and started the whole ordeal to, I assume, come back with a vengeance and seize power. I don't know their main goal, but I'm sure it'll be interesting when that happens. I talk more about that in my Nova review from a couple weeks ago, so check that out. What's sort of great, though, is that we get a good, decent team book here as Gamora, Darkhawk, and sometimes Carol Danvers are on the case as the Skrull are rallying behind their Messiah again. Must be a Tuesday. Seriously, the Skrull rallies behind a Messiah so much you'd think they were asking for donations during tax season. Now, it does end with Gamora and Darkhawk smoldering on the ground. I'm not sure if they're dead, though. I kind of hope so, because that would be a hell of a thing to bury one of the lesser one-shots. No offense, but it's called Imperial Guardians. This isn't going to be an, oh, people will want to read this in the same way that a She-Hulk or even Black Panther book would. But it would still be ballsy if they did so, especially since I don't think Gamora is going to show up in any more Marvel stuff. My verdict on this is, read it if you're interested in the Imperial War. Ignore it otherwise. Dan Abnett is beyond prolific as a writer, and he knows how to write punchy dialogue and a solid issue for his series. Basically, this is a read when you're going to read through the whole thing when it gets put into a trade or whatever Marvel Unlimited is doing for a reading order bundle thing. I don't know words anymore. I'm doing 15 reviews in a single day, and I am currently doped out of my mind on antihistamines and anti-cold meds. Yeah. Look, I'm not a perfect man. I am, however, going to squee the second I see Jimmy Palmiotti on a Punisher book. Yes, I know, I think he was only the inker on Welcome Back, Frank, but have you seen those inks? And the dude is a great writer, so yeah, I'm absolutely excited for Marvel Knights Punisher #1 by Jimmy Palmiotti and Dan Panosian, with letters by Richard Starking and Comic Craft's Tyler Smith. I'll skip the solicit since it's just saying that it's written by Marvel Knights co-founder Jimmy Palmiotti and drawn by Dan Panosian. I don't even think it says that this Marvel Knights imprint is a 6-part world to come dystopian future. One that really seems to be up Frank Castle's alley, honestly. And yeah, given that the first page is him throwing people into a meat grinder for information, really does indeed accentuate that fact. I'll start with the downside I think I have with this. And it's not a downside of the writing. The writing for this is phenomenal. It's all set in an alt future. That's it. That's my major issue with this book. Because it isn't, here's the red band version of what's happening in the main 616, like Heart of Marvel Knights did. And I'm wondering if that's because this was greenlit before Marvel decided that the red band experiment failed. But then again, maybe this is for the best that it's in this kind of future, because it allows for Frank to be harder than ever without the reader wondering, hey, why hasn't Spider-Man shown up to ask why he's being so weird? Especially with how that ending sets up. But other than that, this is a really great in-a-vacuum Punisher story. Now, when I say in a vacuum, I mean it's a great Punisher story, complete with the beatings and booties that really being a seedy book should feel. To ruminate a little bit, I grew up reading the original Punisher miniseries by Steve Grant and Mike Zeck, I think, and the main ongoing by Mike Baron and Klaus Janson. While I loved them, there was always a problem I had with it where, even in its dirtiest moments, Punisher was always meeting the heroes on their level. By that I mean the art style, while good, was always the studio standard with some minor variation. So you were in a world where Spider-Man could swing in at any time because it was a little bit more sterile than probably you would expect. But also dirtier than you would expect given that it was the flagship, like the style of the time. I don't want to say sterile. It was like watching network TV, okay? You know they're not actually going to swear hard And even while dealing with mangled corpses and bodies and death of a serial killer, they're not really going to go into detailed showing the mangled remains of the victims. Yes, they can push the envelope, but it's never going to break. That's why Marvel Knight's Punisher worked so well. Granted, a few times before that with some very good graphics, but it was done best with Welcome Back, Frank. Yes, I know I use Volume 1's name instead of calling it Marvel Knight's Punisher, but that's because we're talking about Marvel Punisher now. And that brings me to say that I think this works best because this is the initial Marvel Knights idea, but taken a step further. This isn't just the air quote real world where Punisher is being brutal. This is a brutal world where Punisher can be real and then beaten into being a zombie. Look, it's still comics. But God, this is awesome, and the art is awesome. So my verdict for this fantastic issue is, buy it. Buy it means that this book should be put onto your pull list, either digitally or physically, and definitely get one or two of those variant covers. Although I will say it's a little suspect that he keeps holding the guns in the same position on all of those covers. Either way, still awesome. Go get them all. I already said my piece about Planet Hulk when I covered that Planet She-Hulk tie-in to Imperial War, but apparently we're going to just hop back in and start backfilling in stories set on Sakaar during that time. Cool, I think. This is Return to Planet Hulk #1, written by Greg Pak, art by Carlo Pugliulian, inks by Jason Paz, Roberto Paggi, and Oren Jr., colors by Chris Sotomayor, with letters by Corey Petit. Gamma irradiated gladiatorial action on Planet Hulk. All new story. Green blood will flow and sparks will fly. After escaping the Red King's deadly arena, Hulk faces ferocious monsters and smashes his way through malicious machines and wild robotic terrors in one of his most important battles of survival on the war-torn planet of Sakaar. 2 possible destinies are at stake: the Sakaar Sun, savior of the planet, or Worldbreaker, the legendary destroyer. Will his rage only fuel the chaos on this alien planet? Trust us, you're not going to want to miss out as superstar writer Greg Pak returns to his seminal run on this epic, gripping tale. I mean, what do you want me to say? It's an issue where people find out that his blood can grow vines. He battles stuff, he has his own "I want to be left alone" thing until robots attack, and then he becomes the leader he was in the book. It's a good little tale, honestly. I actually am in fact rewriting this entire part of my review because when I read the solicit initially, I hadn't read the comic. So I went off into a little bit of a knee-jerk rant where, yeah, so many books try to relive the wonder of a top seminal story, but the reason Planet Hulk or Kraven the Last Hunt or even Hush from over on DC worked is because they were a story. Yes, they were in the pages of an ongoing, and it reinvigorated that ongoing because there was a, wow, this is different, and people know the names of these storylines because they were able to be bound together, put into a trade, and the glory of this slice of pie was great. Then everyone wants to stick their thumb in that pie while going, hey, wasn't that pie pretty great? We can still enjoy the Planet Hulk pie whenever we want because it's been reprinted and collected. That was my rant. Until I realized that this issue isn't bad. I don't mean that it's not poorly written. Greg Pak really does do well to recapture that Planet Hulk tone roughly 20 years later. It is harmless to the story proper, but it is good look for new readers that will read it and say, wow, maybe that new trade version coming out is worth buying. I think this is a terrible marketing strategy, but at the same time, it worked here. Seriously, I want to say that this worked, but it'd be a bad precedent to set if they decided to make these sort of books for other stories. Imagine a Return to the Crossing. Also, why call this Return to Planet Hulk? I really think that's a terrible name because it instantly breeds, well, that thing that was in my head when I read the solicit. It breeds this bad thought in the consumer's mind that we're taking a new story and going back to Sakaar, which we already kind of are with She-Hulk later. Still, my verdict for this is read it with an asterisk. Read it with an asterisk in this sense definitely means that you should read it. It is a good read, especially for those that have read Planet Hulk before. But if you haven't, this may get you a bit of a, oh, what's going on? I could easily get invested in this story, and you should read it. But I would actually suggest that buying the new Planet Hulk collection and then read this after. There is a reason that it is considered the best Hulk story. I mean, it may be beaten out by just how popular Immortal Hulk was, but not the point. Planet Hulk is the iconic Hulk story, so you should read it and check it out for yourself. I've covered when the original Strange Tales became the first Doctor Strange title on Reader's History. Or a comic a day technically, and then I bundled it for Reader's History. And I've been a huge fan of the second version when it was a split book between Doctor Strange and Cloak and Dagger, my beloved. Although I haven't gotten to that section in the Reader's History of Cloak and Dagger, that I will eventually get back to, I swear. The point is, there is big things hooked with that title, so let's see if that title can beat the skill check with Strange Tales number 1. Written by Jeremy Whitley, art by Bailey Underwood, colors by Jim Campbell, with letters by Joe Caramagna. Roll the dice, if you dare! It's Halloween, and Nico Minoru joins her girlfriend Carolina Dean and friends Teddy Altman and Billy Camplin for a rousing round of RPG Husgaus and Hydras. But when a dice roll leads to goblins materializing in real life and her friends all disappearing, Nico Minoru is soon left running through New York City streets with a very real dragon hot on her trail. Desperate for help, she finds herself at the Scarlet Witch's last door. Will these two witches find their missing heroes and piece together how this board game came to life? Or will their adventure end in a critical loss? This is a fun romp. I wish I had more to say about it, but honestly, that's it. You have Nico and Scarlet Witch dealing with magical game of off-brand D&D, complete with Scarlet Witch getting herself some cool armor. It's a Halloween fun with It's Halloween fun with the magic side of things. Well, okay, mostly it's Sister Grimm and Scarlet Witch, since Carolina, our glowing rainbow goddess, is in one panel, same with Teddy, while Billy, that's Wiccan to people who like codenames, is in it for like 5 panels maybe. This is a book that if you go into it wanting to complain that Nico comes off like a scared child, complete with a frumpy wicked witch hat on, with a few moments of her cowering behind a very cool and almost above it all Scarlet Witch, you could. But at the same time, it's not that deep, bro. This isn't a runaway books about the danger of mazes and monsters in a weird satanic panic way. It's not a Scarlet Witch reality-altering trip through the source of magic. It is a fun romp with 2 fan-favorite witches who get to battle an impish nightmare before needing to go see Doctor Strange in the next issue. I will say that I absolutely think that the art is what steals the show here, though. It's lighthearted, easy to read, yet detailed, especially when you get to slow down for these big Sakuga moments, like when Scarlet Witch reveals that she has Dragon Slayer on her character sheet and spawns this really epic armor and giant sword. And even when she beats Nightmare, it matches the tone perfectly, and it truly does work for me. So my verdict on this is a simple and easy buy it. Buy it means that it should be added to your pull list, both digitally and physically. I'd also up that to the variant covers absolutely being worth it. Technically, that does make this a collected, though, I guess, so go do that either way. Is Marvel just trying to see if they can save money on colored ink? I think every other week over the last month or two, I have had to cover a black and white comic book from Marvel. Well, of course, they've been adding splashes of red. Can't do any color with black and white other than red. And shades of gray, of course. But hey, this is a horror anthology, so maybe it works. This is Marvel Black, White, Blood, and Guts number 1, with 3 short tales by 3 separate creative teams, so first the solicit, and then the tales. It's October. You know what that means. It's the season for ghouls, goblins, and other horrifying haunts. And unfortunately for your favorite heroes and villains, but frightfully fortunate for you, readers out there in mighty Marveldom, the Marvel U is far from immune to the effects of this time of year. Cool. So the first tale is The Trail, written by Al Ewan, art by Kev Walker, with letters by Joe Sabino. Long story short, Blade talks a lot about how edgy and cool he is as he tracks down a blood bank and stops it. Yep. Then there's Traffic, written by G. Willow Wilson, art by Demalia Pramanik, with letters by Joe Sabino. A little girl vampire hires Blade to get her safely to New Jersey, for the first time anyone's ever heard that sentence. But he finds out that he got played by the end, but there's nothing he can do except sigh and walk away into the night. Finally, we end with The Price of Iron, written by Chris Condon, art by Claire Rowe, colors by D. Caniff, with letters by Joe Sabino. Sweet Christmas! So these two kids break into a closet to get the helmet Iron Man was wearing when he died. However, when one of the boys puts it on, he can't take it off. Look, I changed my entire verdict on this comic because of this section, so I'm not going to spoil it. But that generally gets me to the general review portion, right? 3 stories. 2 Blade that aren't bad. I mean, the first one is, I don't want to say it's lame. I get yelled at whenever I call anything that Al Ewing writes lame. But, well, you could tell Al writes something when they want to write something, and when there's a, yeah, alright, I'll do it, edge to it. The first story is okay, but it has no feeling behind it. The G. Willow Wilson one is a fantastic example of how easy it is to actually make a Blade story. Just do 16 blocks with vampires. Yes, I'm still salty on how stupid the MCU is with Blade at this point. And finally, that final one that is not linked to Blade or even Marvel horror IPs at all, and what I thought this book was going to be with a solicit like that, it's only Marvel because honestly the helmet is specifically to Iron Man. But this is honestly the exact same story you could tell with like an old school Knight's visor helmet, if you really wanted to, but that's what makes it great. That also might be why the final story hit me so hard, because I yawned at the first one and the second one was good, that I think it could be without actually being a Blade book. But that third one makes me say that my verdict for this is definitely buy it. Buy it means it is absolutely worth reading and owning. And honestly, there is a couple more issues coming out, so add it to your pull list. I'd say go digital on the buys and then get the trade when it's applicable. I never get to say the word applicable anymore, so there's that. So, pull digital, buy trade. Now, I may just be a white boy who grew up in North Carolina and now lives in central New York, and I somehow feel like I'm not going to be a good voice to talk about a comic about the racial tensions that led around the Zoot Suit Riot. I'm only qualified to say that the Cherry Poppin' Daddy song is straight fire, yo. Let's get into Death to Pachuco, #1, written and lettered by Henry Barejas, art by Rachel Merrill, with colors by Lee Loffridge. During the summer of 1943, Los Angeles became a hotbed of tension and conflict as a series of fierce clashes erupted between U.S. Navy members and Mexican-American youth stemming from the murder of Carlos Urbano. Private Eye Ricardo Ricky Telez needs to find the Sleep Lagoon killer before the racist mob kills him in the Zoot Suit Riot. The clock is ticking, and it's a bad time to be a Mexican. Luckily, this also begins with the definition of Pachuco, which is a flashy dressing Mexican-American that usually belongs to a gang. Cool. So yes, this is a Chicano noir that I don't think I've ever really seen before. I've seen plenty of black-led noir focusing on the African-American experience, especially during the Jazz Age, so this is honestly a fresh and unique take on that. It's also pretty poignant given the very awkward repeat of history that we are currently in, but I told my producer that I would not make these reviews political discourse anymore. If you would like to hear me talk about rioting, well, go check out Killing 15 Minutes. Specifically the AJ Files, where we talk about 4 very prominent riots that may or may not have been race-based to some extent. But let's take out the broken Spanish that I only kind of know. I think I only like this book. I don't love it. The art style is good, but at the same time, it feels a bit too fragmented in sections. I think it comes from the abstract art, which works phenomenal for scenes like at the jazz nightclub, but it doesn't have the same flow to work for the action, and it's not static enough to give the dialogue scenes a sense of grounding to keep it engaging. I think that means that I respect this comic more than I enjoy it, but I do honestly enjoy it. My verdict for it is honestly going to be read it. Like I said, I think it's a good comic, but I also see a lot of differing opinions on the writing and the art, so any official statement I can say can easily be rebuffed in either way. So the natural answer is, read it for yourself. It is not a bad comic by any means, so getting it and reading it for yourself is absolutely the way to go, I think. I could see this being a lot of people's next favorite book. The cover of this next comic is a hardcore heavy metal rock band. Hey, did Image Comics get Tim Seeley to create a This Is Spinal Tap in the G.I. Joe universe? I'm both confused and intrigued, as all comics should. This is G.I. Joe, Cold Slither #1, written by Tim Seeley, art by Juan Cabal, colors by Rex Locus, with letters by Pat Brousseau. The greatest band ever reunites to rock and rule the world. Discover the true, story of what happened to Cold Slither through the eyes of the bands themselves, who of course were not the Dreadnoks on an undercover mission. But as Cobra is topping the charts and dominating the world, can G.I. Joe find a way to change the tune? Okay, so while I want to say that this is a light book playing off a behind-the-band sort of expose in a where are they now for the band Cold Slither, who were just the Dreadnoks being the face for Cobra's domination, more importantly, it's the second half of this book that I think absolutely really follows up with a great message, as the same bangers that gave Cobra power throughout this book also was able to rally people to stand against Cobra. Propaganda is a bitch like that. However, I think that's why I really enjoyed this, despite the fact that I have absolutely no idea how the G.I. Joe universe is even more. It is again the biggest drawback to doing first issues as it is. I get to play just the tip with every IP. But luckily, I think this is a one-shot, and I think it's a really good one-shot for what it is. Granted, I also hate whenever I say for what it is, because it feels like I'm talking down to the book, but that's not fair, because while the package is in what I would call a Saturday morning cartoon, the message is really pure and simple and great about propaganda, and honestly, just read the last page of the story, which summarizes the whole thing. And that leads me to my verdict. Buy this book. Buy it means that it is, well, worth owning. It's a one-shot, so it's not like you can add it to your pull list, but definitely get the physical copy of this. And all those variant covers. They are most excellent, dude. I will not judge this book for having a Dark Knight Returns homage cover. I will not judge this book for having a Dark Knight Returns homage cover. I will, however, love this book because the names they have on it are really great. But let's get down to business with Super Creep Show number 1. With 3 different stories, with 3 different creative teams, so let's start at the top and work our way down with this double-stuffed special. First we have Funeral for a Fiend, written by Dan Waters, art by Carmine Di Giamenico, colors by Andres Massa, with letters by Pat Brosseau. How do I best describe this? This story is basically the funeral for a friend and return of Superman done in 12 pages, where he's actually an evil zombie that's also turned into a microbe swarm that devours everything. That's actually pretty neat. Suddenly I'm very curious about Dan Waters making a DC story though. Then there's Grave Ghost Reborn, written by Ryan Stegman, art by Riley Rosmo, colors by Inaki Azpiazu, with letters by Pat Brosseau. Oh shit, I'm starting to think this might be a superhero-focused horror book, because this, I think it's supposed to be kind of a Deadpool proxy, but mostly it's just a generic gun-happy merc with a mouth kind of thing that abounds, who gets reborn into a future world and then gets his brain scrubbed to be a Saturday morning cartoon superhero, in feel. Sort of like if Wildcats got a Saturday morning cartoon. Finally, there's Growing Pains, written by Ed Brisson, art by Andre Bresson, colors by Adriano Lucas, with letters by Pat Brosseau. And the tale that ends us is a scientist trying to make his name by making a thing that makes you grow, and he does so, only he grows into a hulking rage beast. And then the hubris that he's not going to be known as a great scientist, but a mass murderer. But then he starts to shrink again. Except this time his skin doesn't shrink, just his body. So he ends up as a blob of flesh, suffocating under the weight of his own ego. Well, that and half a ton of flesh, but still. Okay, so this is going to be short and sweet. I'm just going to say my verdict here because the answer is collect it. Collect it means that you should absolutely have the physical copy of this with all of the variants, even if there are only a couple. And yes, obviously, you should be checking out the standard Creep Show series that I reviewed a couple weeks ago. It is also awesome. But this, I mean, come on. It's superhero writers making superhero horror in a great way. Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Hi, I'm AJ Carey. This may be my channel, but this is not my show. This is Sammy's Picks. Basically, once a week, my co-host on Killing 15 Minutes, Mything 15 Minutes, and Blanking 15 Minutes, oh, and she's also my sister, picks a new release from our first issues pool that she wants to talk about, as a barely literate casual comic reader. So, time for the Casual Comicist. This shall be fun.
Hello, my spooky people. I'm Sam Rossi, the Casual Comicist. I do rule. I pick my favorites or ones that pique my interest. And this is Sammy's Picks. We have the beginning of an interesting story. I picked the Harley Quinn crossover with Elvira. We need to acknowledge the creators, alright? These are some awesome people. Artists, Amanda Connor and Juan Siamu. Colorist, Amanda Connor and Walter Pereira. Lettering, because lettering I feel is the most important art form when it comes to comic books. Dave Lampier. And the story was written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmieri. Special thanks to Cassandra Peterson, the Mistress of Darkness herself. I love her. I remember watching her as a kid. It was the 90s. We are Pharaoh. Anyways, on to the review. I really thought this was a one-shot because it was a crossover book. To keep this in mind. We start with Harley Quinn having a weird dream. Her and Big Tony talked about it while walking down the boardwalk when Harley has an ooh shiny moment. She catches a large promotional poster of the Mistress of Dark herself, Elvira, and then hugs it. That's when she has a brilliant idea. The biggest, grandest, over-the-top, giant Halloween party. Screw the fact that it's August. This means nothing to her. If Christmas can happen in July, we can have Halloween in August. Now that left us to get Elvira to be the host of the bash. Elvira is fired from her TV show, finds out the entire crew has been fired after being told that her crew would just be moved to other shows. This dude is an asshole. So Elvira goes on the hunt for the corrupt TV executive. Harley follows that fabulous ass Elvira. She does really have a nice ass in real life. And the artist must have paid special attention to that beautiful feature. Better than J-Lo, in my opinion. Elvira reaches her destination and pulls out a baseball bat. Yes, Queen. Goes to enter the house. However, the dude has security with guns. Elvira backs down. She's really smart. And goes on the hunt for an axe in her trunk. This is where Harley makes herself known with a bazooka. And holy Michael Bay, the explosion would have made him happy. The new friends go to a family diner around the corner before the cops show up. For $5,000 and a place to live, Elvira agreed to the deal. And that's the first issue. I'm not a full fan of some of the artwork, and I know that's my own personal preference. I'm not a fan of the style Harley is drawn as. So that is my only negative about this book. I love the lettering. The story kept me turning the pages because I wanted to get to the party. When I finished the book and found out it was a full series, I squealed. I cannot wait for the next book. That means you should read it too. But I'm the casual comicist, so if you agree or think I'm so far off the train of thought, comment on this episode. Comment on our Twitter at CareyOn Prod or CareyOn Productions on Facebook. I'm Sam Rossi, the casual comicist. See you at the party, Inklings.
With all of that, though, maybe I'm wrong or I missed a comic that was worth talking about. Let me know on the YouTube video version of this, on whatever podcast platform you're listening on, or on social medias at The Comic Archivist on Facebook, on Twitter at First Issues Now, and even on Blue Sky at AJC Does It All. I'm always open to being told how wrong I am about the current mainstream and indie books alike. Don't forget to like, share, follow, subscribe, and all the other stuff that I'm being told that I need to say to keep this show going again. Don't forget to check out the other CareyOn Production podcasts like Killing 15 Minutes, Mything 15 Minutes, and Blinking 15 Minutes. They're all great in their own way, I promise. More than anything, though, remember, stay golden, Inklings!